Hello, everyone. Welcome to New Gen Politics. So, the right is exploding this week. They're having their ongoing civil war, which we had talked about was going to happen inevitably, but it's happening so quickly and way more clearly than I thought it would. So, I wanted to talk about that a little bit. The fact that basically this week alone, most people have stated where they're at, which side they're on, and the two sides are evidently clear. It is America first. It is Israel first. That's it. Those are the two sides. And we had talked about before how America, the number one issue that was going to determine whether you're going to be part of the future of the Republican Party or not was going to be Israel. It's always been Israel secretly, but it has now been brought to the forefront of in upcoming elections, the most important issue is going to be whether you unequivocally support Israel or not. And that's where the lines are drawn. And it's the key indicator, it's the litmus test of your entire candidacy, your belief system. And we're seeing where the sides are. Randy Fine versus Nick Fuentes, Mark Levine, Brett Cooper, Candace Owens on this side, people like Sean Hannity on the other side, right? You're seeing the right very clearly kind of break up. Ben Shapiro on one side, Dave Smith on the other side. I don't care to go through all the names, but I think you basically get the point that the sides are splitting. There's very few people who are still kind of maintaining that middle ground. That's people like Megyn Kelly, Matt Walsh. But fundamentally, we know which side Matt Walsh is going to jump from eventually. You know, he's like the kid on the end of the high jump, and he's just 1 foot away, and everybody's yelling at him like, "Come on, Matt, jump, jump!" And he's like, "I don't know, I'm a little scared. But you know he's going to jump, and you know it's going to happen. He's going to fall into the far right. That's what's going to happen with Matt Walsh. Michael Knowles probably will follow suit. Megyn Kelly, I think, will probably fall on the side of the traditional conservatives. But even so, I mean, like this week, Donald Trump and Ben Shapiro have done the reputation destruction speed run. It's almost like astonishing. Like it's almost the perfectly crafted way to get everybody to hate you. I mean, just come out. You shouldn't be able to afford a home. You should work 4 times harder than your parents. You should basically never live up to your parents' lifestyle. Everything should consecutively get worse for year over year. And if you can't afford to live here, you should just leave. I mean, like, and we're going to replace you. The reason things are getting worse is not for some outside act of God. It's not like we had some massive total collapse, like some massive earthquake or volcano. It's not, it's not an act of God. It's not some war. The reason life sucks is because they make it suck. They do it intentionally. The fact that we have about 100 million people, like a third of America's population, just shouldn't be here. That includes illegals and legals, because we just know the problems that all the illegal immigrants are bringing too. Just the fact that they're driving the prices of everything up. They're replacing people in their jobs. It came out this week that 80% of the H-1B jobs are entry level to low skill jobs. And then Donald Trump comes out and says, "Oh no, the American people are too dumb and not hardworking enough to do those jobs." It's like, dude, they're working at 7-Eleven. Literally, a lot of the jobs are 7-Eleven. So the right is exploding. Ben Shapiro and Donald Trump are making everybody hate them. And people have to choose a side. And you see people coming out who, like, I was surprised when Brett Cooper came out and said Randy Fine should move to Israel. It would make him a lot happier. Like, wow, that was really cool. And so Brett Cooper's probably safe. It's like it's more of like who's okay, who's not okay. That's kind of what trends in politics. I've said before, you basically get like 5 or 10 years of shelf life. If you're really popular, maybe 20. But it's just natural. You will have a rise and a decline. Sometimes you'll have a second rise, like Tucker Carlson. He rose. He was like number one on Fox, kind of went away for a couple years, kind of came back. Now he's super talked about in because of his podcast and whatnot. And you'll kind of have a rise and fall, and throughout time you just have to see whose ideas are staying up, who can change their mind, who can adapt to where the party is going. And that's why you have people like Tucker lasting longer. And Ben Shapiro, you're seeing at the end of his career, like how Jordan Peterson was at the end of his career last year. His career basically over, and it was over before he got sick. It was just he just wasn't keeping up with where the party was going, where the ideas were going. People like Charlie Kirk were actually starting to shift where he was believing, clearly indicated by all the messages at the end and kind of the things he had been saying. He was starting to shift before his untimely death. And so you kind of just throughout time, year over year, you have to say who's really still on the team, who's still, it's like the NFL, you kind of like who can still play, who's a little past their prime, who should we get, who do we really need on the team? We need more politicians, we need more journalists, we need more writers, we need more speakers, who in which space is, on it, who's not. And instead of giving them money, you give them attention. You give them your purchasing power of your time to go and watch a Nick Fuentes video or a Tucker Carlson video. In the politicians, you give your vote. All of this is free. In fact, there's other ways to support these people, but yeah, you kind of, the people you have in your space, your representatives are your representatives because you allow them to. And it's like a free act to give that. And it's a free act to take it away too, by just not endorsing them, not watching them, leaving some comments on their videos. I mean, you can't go underneath a Matt Walsh post and not see 20,000 comments that say jump ship. Like, why are you still at the Daily Wire? People will say something, Matt Walsh will say something like, America, should put Americans first. He's like, okay, but your boss doesn't think so. So I think that's funny. So that's why I think Matt will jump eventually. But this week has just been devastating to the right, in an outward sense. But to me, it was always going to happen. The left is playing on it, and that people were concerned about is, the left is going to kind of make this a worse problem. They're going to sow division. That's why there was like 6 Nick Fuentes articles in 1 week by the New York Times. They're trying to prop Nick Fuentes up to, get people to like him and split the Republican Party in half. They're trying to split the votes or so. And I think that's a bad plan. It's not a bad plan theoretically. In most circumstances, divide your enemy. A house divided against itself cannot stand. That makes sense. However, this was going to happen anyways. I talked about this before. I'm not the first person to talk about this. This has been coming on literally since 2016. I was not predicting it that early, but it's been very evident the last like 2 or 3 years. But this was coming on since before Trump. Just the thing is, when Trump came on the scene, for the last 10 years, because he had his on presidency and then his off presidency, now he's, president again. For the last 10 years, Trump has sucked all the oxygen out of the room. The Republican Party is the Trump Party, which is the MAGA Party. Okay, got it. That's the new team. That's the new team name. We're under new management. He prevented anybody from not being MAGA, basically. And so all the neocons kind of got in line. All the far right people said, okay, we'll relax and we'll let Trump do his thing. We won't go crazy until after, he's done. And so he just had such an iron fist on the party that everybody was essentially in lockstep, relatively. That's why they won a lot of elections. They have put the hurt on the Democrats to a certain degree. But ideologically, all this stuff was still breeding underneath, and it was getting worse and worse. The division was growing. The separation between the prominent speakers in ideologies in the Republican Party has been getting broader and broader, because like Nick Fuentes has risen on the scene during that time. It's all under Trump's wing. It's all still under like the one unified Republican Party, but it's separating more and more and more, until the point that when Trump is gone, when his presidency is over, and he's going to be very old anyways, the king essentially is dead. and now you have the 20 different houses vying for power. The 20 different vassal states, because that's how differing the ideologies are. And it's going to be crazy. It's going to be a crazy succession war because, unfortunately, you have the two sides are the majority of the people are now far right, but they have no power. But the majority of the people with the power, the legislators, the people who make the rules, and the people who give them all their money, there's not as many of them, but they still have all the institutional power. So it's quite bizarre where the people have a massive disdain for the officials of their own party. And it's very, I mean, that's going to look weird. But anyways, to get back to my point, all of this was coming on and was going to happen. And so when Trump is gone, it's going to happen all at once. And that's why it's probably good that it's happening quickly. And when the Democrats are propping Nick Fuentes up, I think that's a mistake, because I believe that it's going to happen anyways. You're just making it less painful for us. It's just quicker. It's in and out. It's like a quick surgery, 6 weeks recovery instead of like, a 2 or 3 year long rule. What's going to happen is the candidates who just should not be there, people like Vivek's going to get stomped in Ohio. Probably. Randy Fine's going to get thrown out of the party. The most egregious offenders, Byron Donalds is going to lose. These, when he runs for governor, I think he's planning to. The people who, and then especially in like the close elections, if you throw up people who are not American first, they're going to lose. That is what's going to happen. And it's what Nick wanted to happen with Trump, where we're going to throw the election to prove we're sick of getting slop candidates. And I said that wasn't a good idea because Trump was going to win regardless. The time to do that is during a primary. And that's now. That is now, is during these relatively inconsequential elections when you're talking about like governors and, some reps and whatnot. Yeah, they're important, but the point is, you want to tell the Republican Party, we're not accepting anybody under the sun. If you say they're a Republican, we're not just going to vote for them. We want a good, solid America First candidate. And that's why during the primary, that is where you put their feet to the fire. And you say, if you throw up Nikki Haley, if you give us, Vivek, or somebody who is clearly not America First interested, if you give us Randy Fine, we're just not going to vote. We're just going to throw it. And the Groypers themselves have enough people now to just throw the presidential election. So I think, actually, I've been saying for a long time this past year, that the only candidate we had really is like Massey is probably the best case. If he can weather the storm, the infinite money being thrown against him. Because Marjorie Taylor Greene, you could say, also could run, but I don't want her to run for president, and I don't think she'd win. Who else do you have, right? Who else? Because you have Vance, but it's untrustworthy, and his background's a little shifty, and he's changed his name 3 times, and people, I don't think it's going to be Vance. I don't think Vance is our guy, honestly. And he's tied himself to Trump's, one man stand. Like he's on Captain Ahab's crew. Like he's going down with the ship with this madman who is, going to throw everything away at the last second. And so Vance either has to defend him, which is not going to happen, not going to be possible, or if Trump stays on his current trajectory, he could have, like a, Ghost of Christmas Past appear to him in the middle of the night and he actually fixes things. But it looks like things are just going to get worse. Like Trump is going to end his presidency in disgrace. And so Vance can either tie himself to that and go down with the ship, or he can stab him back in the back, which makes him look like a rat, and people don't like that anyways. And then they'll say, where were you when Trump was making all these bad decisions? Why did you not say anything? And I get not saying anything is a good policy when you don't know where the party is headed, but at the same time, people will say, you were there and you didn't say anything the whole time. What was that about? So I don't think it's going to be Vance, because I was saying I thought it could be Massey. Because I couldn't think of really anybody else who would do it. And because, who else would even possibly be, like Jesse Waters would be like maybe okay. Matt Walsh would be maybe okay, who could like run for president. You just don't have anybody who has probably the name recognition or the ability to win other than Massey, unfortunately. And then I remembered, I was like, for some reason, I was just not thinking Tucker Carlson because he had rejected it so many times. I just had a block in my head where I just would not think about Tucker because I thought he might run in 2024 and kind of try to primary Trump, and he didn't. And he's just never had really that much interest in running for office. But I think it might actually be Tucker because I think he's basically the best we got. He's all we've got. And I think people might talk him into it. I think he genuinely believes in God, genuinely believes God has a plan for people. And a lot of times that plan involves you doing what you don't want to do. And that's Tucker. That is like, God might tell Tucker, okay, it's you. And he might say, okay, but I really don't want to do it. And God's like, yeah, but it's you. And all the people around him, and he's a unifier. He could really be what Trump isn't. Like, this is, I've mentioned the Greek tragedy angle with Trump before. The Greek tragedy of like Trump, a man obsessed with his ego, does everything to protect it, in the end ruins it. And what's even more Greek tragedy is like Trump is the man uplifted by the people to represent him. He goes, he creates this movement. He says all the rhetoric about going against the swamp and draining it, and he marches right up to that mansion at the top of the hill. Everybody's got their pitchforks and their torches, and Trump walks right in and he sits right down. And then the second man they send, Tucker Carlson, is the one who, leads, is thrown up by the people. He doesn't even want to lead. He doesn't even want to be there, but they make him go, and then he goes and he ruins it. Can you imagine if like Tucker Carlson co-opts Trump's base and uses it against him using the same rhetoric, but actually fulfilling it, and he's the guy who doesn't want to even be there? It's like a perfect, it's like the Greek tragedy. Oftentimes in politics, the silliest thing will happen. I could see it happening. I really could. I'm not gonna lie. That sounds like a narrative that will probably come to fruition. And that's the reality. Is Trump might be talked into it by everybody. Everyone, except for maybe Ben Shapiro, Megyn Kelly, Tim Pool, Sean Hannity, Nick Fuentes, Candace Owens. I think everybody could get on board with Tucker Carlson, and people would want him to run, and he would actually be like a unifier for the party, and actually bring the party together to a certain degree. And like over time, you just kind of trim that fat. You just kind of like kick out the old, your old stars, you get them off the payroll, and then you bring in new people. You can have a relatively peaceful transition in the way of the party. But in order to do that, the foot has to be put down that we're not going to accept the slop anymore. And the slop is getting worse. The candidates are getting worse. It's just obviously clear they don't like us, and they actually hate us, and they want to make everything worse. It's abundantly clear at this point. So we need good candidates. If Tucker runs, that's probably the best case scenario, because he clobbers Vance. I mean, Tucker just destroys Vance, and then he actually has a good chance of winning the presidency. But Vance being tied to Trump, and everything just about Vance in general, just in a vacuum, I don't see that going very well in the future for the Republican Party. But I have hope. I'm actually hopeful to see just how people are reacting, because the future is the people. The future is people paying attention, advocating for people, unsubscribing from the Daily Wire. That's the future, and I'm seeing it, and I'm very hopeful for that, and I'm very happy for that. So anyways, I'm hopeful for the future. I think this was inevitable, but I think this kind of civil war is happening in a much cleaner way than I thought it would. And I think the majority is with us. It seems people are being phased out pretty quickly when they are identified as not America firsters, not really. And that more and more good people will step up when they're needed. I truly believe we're going to be okay. So that's my thoughts on this. If you made it all the way through the video, I appreciate it. If you like the content, like, share, subscribe. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Thank you for watching.